Hi, I'm Jesse, and I am refuting Courtney's claim of fact speech. And his claim of fact was that you can die fighting for your country at the age of 18, but you are not old enough to have a drink. First, I'll be going over how the English influenced us and how we shouldn't use them as a reason to change our drinking age. Secondly, I will talk about how our drunk driving accidents have more to do with the actual driving part more than the actual drinking. And lastly, I will show you how we should introduce alcohol and at what age. So let's start off with the English. The age 21 was not a random age, as Courtney stated. It did come from the English laws that states that 21 is the age where one is considered an adult. But it was said by the speaker that we are not the English. We need to remember our roots and know that the colonies at the time were mainly colonized by the English. We did have a bit of like Irish and a minor population of the French, but we are primarily English. According to teachingamericanhistory.org, we used 22 of our laws and constitutions came from the Bill of Rights of the English, and that is out of 26 of ours. Therefore, we only made 4. Does that mean that we shouldn't take the other laws that they have created as well? Lowering the drinking age from 21 to 18 would be beneficial, which I agree on, but it has nothing to do with the English and how they have an effect on us. All right. Secondly, I will talk about how drunk driving has to do more with the actual driving and our over-trafficking population, more than the actual drinking part of it. The United States has one of the highest minimum legal drinking age, which is 21. We also have the highest drunk driving accidents in the world. We have 10,000 reported deaths due to DUI driving, and that is annually. But we have 10,000 of them out of 1.3 million overall. Courtney stated that China has one of the lowest drinking age, I think in the top 3, and they have one of the lowest drunk driving accidents in the world. I think that has more to do with how we have a lot more of high traffic areas in China. We have places like New York and Los Angeles, which we have an abundance of people driving cars. And China, not so much. Out of 1.3 million, we have 10,000 deaths. In China, out of 200,000 fatal crashes, 5,000 of them are DUIs. That means that 1 out of 40 accidents in China were because of drinking. While in the United States, merely 1 out of 130,000 were because of drunk driving. So we have way more crashes, and they have less. So overall, their ratio of accidents to drunk driving is a lot higher than ours. So the original speaker stated that the deaths were mainly between the age of 21 to 25 in drunk driving, but it is seen that 1 out of 4 teens from the age of 10 to 18 have drank before. And in the United States, we start driving at 16. Why does this actually start at the age of 21 from 20 to 25? Drunk driving accidents should have started at 16 instead of the 21 that he has stated. And now I'm going to move on to how we should introduce alcohol to the use, and I don't mean through education purely. I am all for lowering the legal drinking age, and I will tell you what age I think it should be reduced to. I choose, I think, 19 off of my personal research, and I'm not saying that just because I'm 19, but it should be 19. We might see that as an odd age because we're so used to 18 you're legal, and 21 you become an adult. But I think that 19 is the age where everyone's already out of high school for the majority, and that's when we start colleges. And according to Indiana.edu, young adults should be allowed to drink in controlled environments such as restaurants, taverns, pubs, which are bars, and official school and university functions. This is mostly supervised where there's people around, and also it's where it's supervised, and also these are places where you won't have to be driving much to reduce our drunk driving age. In universities, a lot of people live on campus, they'll just be walking back to their dorms. Restaurants, carpooling, and same thing with taverns and pubs. So in conclusion, you should be able to fight for your country and have a drink. They've been doing it anyways because they're over international waters. But I also agree that they should be able to come home and drink which is at the age of 19. Thank you.
All right, well, you labeled the advocate's claim. I'm not exactly sure that the claim that you're talking about is ultimately the advocate's point, although they do make that point in their speech. I think there's a different argument that's being made, and in fact the different argument that's being made you agree with several times, and that is that there's a need to lower the drinking age. I don't remember exactly how the secondary issues address that point directly. You mentioned a couple of points that I do recall being presented, and I think you do answer those pretty effectively. I do think we get a little sidetracked on this issue of what the roots of the age of 21 are. I'm not exactly sure why that affects what the age should be, or whether or not there's an advantage or a disadvantage to having the age at that particular level. If it was lower and we would have fewer accidents, if it was lower and we'd have more accidents, that would be the justification for maybe taking an action. If it was lower and we had less problems with drinking, or if it's lower and we have more problems with drinking, that would be, I think, a clearer justification. It's interesting history lesson. I'm not exactly sure that it matters that much in the long run concerning the argument. You do acknowledge that the MLDA is highest in the U.S., and you talk about the comparisons that are being made. In particular, you use China as an illustration. And the numbers that you had sound interesting. It sounds like you did the analysis on your own. You do want to tell us where you got those numbers. It sounds to me like it's, I'm still not sure if it's 1.3 million accidents each year, and China only has 200,000 accidents each year. That seems like a disproportionate number. There's probably a reason for that, and the first reason that jumps out is not many people drive in China. I don't know that that's the case, but that seems like that's what that information is about. But the way you break down those numbers and the fatalities related to the number of people who are involved in accidents, I thought that was an interesting comparison, and if that is accurate, that's a good way to kind of diminish the impact of the age difference between China and the U.S. on the MLDA. The argument about, on the next point concerning teenagers and their driving and teenagers and their drinking issues, I think I understand the point that you're making, but I'm not exactly sure if the rate of intoxicated driving is lower between, for people who are 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. I need some statistical information on that. The only thing that I get is information about the use of alcohol by people under the age of 18. It's 1 in 4, but we don't necessarily get any data about the driving issue. You kind of assume that the advocate's information clarifies that, and I don't think it does. And then we get a policy argument suggesting that we should have a lower drinking age at 19. And you give an explanation about why you think 19 is an appropriate age. The idea that they're out of high school, well, why does that matter? I think there are reasons that it matters, but you don't really explain why it matters. Contact, I think, would probably be the main issue. If you're if you're 18 and can drink and you're in high school, then everybody who's your friend can be drinking with you, whether they're 14, 15, or 16, because you're 18 and you have access to it. Whereas if you're out of high school, you don't have the same kind of contact. That's probably the argument that exists there, but it's not very well explained. And then the idea that they could drink at colleges, well, I assume that, If you want to give people specific rights to drink at colleges or on military bases, that's a different issue. You know, you can fight for your country, fine. Drink on base and you're not allowed to drive off of the base, I'm all good with that. You know, if you can enlist at 17, drink at 17, that sort of thing. But that's a policy argument. It's not really a claim of fact. And the argument here needs to be about the factual disputes. All right, thank you.